Thanks for joining us for another episode of Keeping It Together, where we shine light on the creative ways that Indigenous people have kept it together throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and reflect on what they can teach us about keeping well during times of adversity. My name is Louis Crowshoe, and I'm joined here with my other co hosts.
Today we have a very special guest, Grandmother Doreen Spence. Originally from Saddle Creek Cree Nation, Grandmother Doreen is a Cree Elder and Indigenous rights activist and was one of the first Indigenous women in Canada to obtain a practical nursing certificate. Her activities as an activist, nurse, educator, and expert in traditional knowledge are recognized nationally and internationally. We are so grateful that she can join us today to share some of her teachings on how spirituality and ceremony can promote wellness. Thank you so much for joining us, Grandmother Doreen.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to be here with you today. I always say life is a gift. It's not a given. I get up every day and I thank Creator for another day to be able to serve the people. And I always say that the healing begins with me. I must take good care of myself in order to gain balance and harmony in my life and have peace within my soul. So hi, thank you.
Thank you, Grandmother Doreen. We only could gloss over who you are and your many accomplishments in our intro. Do you think you can share a little bit more about yourself and about your background?
Oh, wow. I was born and raised on the Goodfish Lake Reservation, which Goodfish and Saddle Lake at one time were one reserve, but they broke it up. And my mother comes from Goodfish. My father came from Saddle Lake. And my 10-digit number card says I'm from Saddle Lake because the colonial system says you got to do according to your father. And so that's where I call home. I've lived here in Calgary. In 1970, I moved here from Toronto. My husband was in the military. And so I really kept having these repetitive dreams and that to come and move to Calgary because there was so much work to be done. And when I arrived, I realized the difference between up north, where I was born and raised, and the difference down south here, where it's very divisive and racism was prevalent. And so I realized I had my work cut out. So I've been able to really travel the globe. I spent a lot of time in the community making friends and relatives here locally. I've been adopted into several of the families, and I got to know all the local elders, who most of them are all gone now. And so it's making peace within the area that you live in, and then to be able to carry out the work. So I'm really pleased that I've been able to feel at home in this area because of the adopted families I have nearby. And so I need to have the reservation close by because I still pick a lot of the medicines, and I need the area to connect and keep me balanced and keep me healthy. So I'm happy that I have a place nearby to go to. Prior to COVID, I was up at the hub and we were doing circles on a regular basis for the students, just supporting the students up there. And so just that week, I got an email from the office saying, we're canceling Friday's circle because of COVID. So that kind of sent questions for me, many questions. And I sent them an email and I said, why? Like, our students need us more now than ever. And so I said, "You're familiar with the virtual world. I have never done it. So I will have to learn how to do it." So anyway, I said, "Why don't you send me a link?" And because this was on a Thursday, and I think we had these circles every Friday, and so from 10 to 12, and they were weekly circles. So they sent me the link. I managed to get on, and it's ironic because my daughter wasn't around. There's nobody around. I live alone at home here. And so, but somehow or another, Zoom was good. I just got on and I found my way through. And I've never been taught computers, and I'm 86, so I'm a little bit slower than what I used to be, but I managed to do Zoom class. And so I was really, it validated the need that these circles were imperative throughout COVID. So every Friday we would meet from 10 to 12 with these students, and Pam would join us quite often. And for the most part, it was just myself. And then towards the following year, we had Roy Bearchief from Mount Royal joined us, and then occasionally Edme would join us. So it was good to have 2 or 3 elders supporting these young people, because I found that more than ever they needed this, because there was all this media and this hyped up thing about COVID, and that was just in your face wherever you looked. And there was a lot of fear around COVID. So for me, I made peace with COVID, and I asked COVID not to visit me. And I'd rather be healthy and well because I had lots of work to do. So I made this peace with COVID prior to the outbreak. But those circles, they continue today, because for the last 2 years, we did them every Friday and from 10 to 12. And some of these students, like if you reach out to them, they will let you know how important those circles are. And so last year we started going bi-weekly, and now they're connection circles. So we started off with the Aim High group and then ended up with the connection circle. And these are students from Edmonton. I think Ashley is in Ontario, and different places. Some people join us from the north. So they're very important for our students, and it's critical to have access to elders for them, because a lot of what they do is very stressful. There's a lot of demand on them, and it's helping them maintain that equilibrium or that balance and harmony.
I've just realized I've actually been in the circles before, because I was part of Aim High, and
Oh,
I got
cool.
like the weekly messages. I don't think I've ever like contributed or anything. It's been a long time too. Like it was like more like when COVID was keeping me like home and stuff. But I was definitely like in some of those meetings like a long time ago though. But did you like find, I guess, like that transition to virtual to be difficult? Like, did you have any difficulties with that, or was it, do you feel it was
Well,
the same?
I do find it more takes the energy, it saps the energy out of you if you're on the computer for any length of time. But after my 2 hours, I don't try to book anything else. I learned that right away, very quickly, that I couldn't take on too much more than that 2 hours. It's also very hard on the eyes. I have to wear my Blu-ray glasses. So I find that it's far more challenging to do a Zoom class than it is an in-person class or circle. And pre-COVID, I still do. And during COVID, it didn't stop me. I'm a lodge holder, so I host sweat lodges on a regular basis and vision quest. So I prepare these people to go out on the vision quest, and there's a lot of preparation. And I did not want to stop that during COVID. So rather than take a group of 4 to 6 people out on the fast at one time, I had to cut down and do 2 or 4 because in the sweat lodge, I didn't want to be too close to people. And I learned how to just use different medicines. Like I put thieves, which is an essential flowers. I put that into my pail, into my bucket, because it's antifungal, antibacterial, and antiviral, and anti-everything. So I put it in my pail. So when we're sitting a few feet apart in the sweat lodge, we're breathing in the same air, but it's the water is and the steam is very much smells and feels, and you can even taste the medicine, when you're sitting in the lodge. And of course, I use 4 different herbs for the 4 different directions when we're in there. And I really pile on the herbs when we're in there. But it took twice the effort and the energy during COVID to continue the ceremonies because I just felt I couldn't stop. I mean, these are very important ceremonies, and ceremony is my life. And so I just kept on going and just had to adapt everything around me. So that's what I did for ceremony. We also combined the full moon ceremonies with the sweat lodge ceremonies most of the time because a lot of the ceremonies do evolve around the cycles of life, like the full moon times and stuff like that. So it was thinking on your feet and making the changes as we went along. But we did well and nobody got sick. Everybody said they needed the sweats more often during COVID than they did post-COVID. And so it was very important for me to have those ceremonies available.
So I was just hoping to ask, actually, could you speak with us a bit about how ceremony and spirituality plays a role in your life and how they've contributed to your pursuits, and especially with keeping it together as well, right?
Well, my life has been different from most Indigenous people. When I was a little fetus in my mother's womb, about 4 months of age, I had this vision and I could hear everything and could see everything that was going on around me. I had this tubes where I could see the food particles coming and going. And I was sitting there and I asked, what am I doing here? Why am I here? What am I looking at? And I was told, you have a choice to be born or not to be born. And I didn't even have a neck. I had these big eyes and I was sitting there in this bubble. And I could hear my grandpa and my granny thinking. And I first thought that came to me, if I have somebody to bring me up in a loving way, I will be born. And then my grandpa spoke up and he told my mother, that little baby has been sent to us from Creator, and you have to take good care of yourself. And we will take the baby as soon as the baby's born. And so I thought in my mind, that's okay, Dad, but who's going to change my diapers and feed me? And then Mom spoke up, my granny, and she said, no, we're going to take the baby as soon as baby's born. And so in the old days, what they would do is they would adopt the children when they were infants, and then they would bring them up in a traditional manner. So I came in during the darkest times of the history of Canada, when there was a war going on, a famine. And of course, we were still on the res, where you couldn't leave the res without a pass and everything else. And so Mom and Dad said I was born at a time in the old Mayan calendar where there is no time. And so they really did their best to pass on the teachings to me. And we left the reserve when I was a child, and then the government caught up with me when I graduated grade 9. So my grandparents were compelled to take me back to the reservation and drop me off because I had to teach school. And so anyway, that's a little bit about my background spiritually. I knew as a little kid that I was never afraid of the animals. I'd go picking berries and wander off, and I'd see a bear, and I was not afraid of the bear. I'd crawl into the bush, and the bear would eat around me and sometimes sniff and go on. And so we grew up, or I was not near anybody else. Like, we didn't have close neighbors or anything. So it was a good opportunity to really connect with the natural world. And so to me, that's been my whole life, is understanding the tree people, the plant people, the rock people, and the water spirits and everything. So it was so natural for me to do that. Whereas as an urban, living in an urban setting, it's hard. So that's why it's so important to have a place nearby that you can continue that ceremony. So I have a little Cookham's Corner out in Bragg Creek, and it has my sweat lodge, a little round house, which I call my hobbit house, where I do ceremony in if it's inclement weather. But everything is set up there for me, so all I have to do is show up, and we have ceremony on a regular basis. To me, spirituality is it's critical. I've never smoked. I don't put anything in my body that's detrimental or harmful to my spirit. I have always been one that will wake up and give gratitude for the day. I start off with meditation. I even when I go for a walk, I walk mindfully with gratitude for the day, that I have no pain in my body, that I'm able to see the beauty, the sun, the stars, the people. It just it's a beautiful way to be. And so if I don't have that on a regular basis, it means that I have to go back out to the land and replenish my spirit.